I'm going to be talking about leverage. I think it's a very important word that you have to understand if you want to maximize and multiply your return on any investment, but also to create a level of wealth that far exceeds what would have been normally acceptable or possible for you. Now, the word leverage is something that we all have an understanding about. We understand how it works. For example, many people understand the power of leverage, using something to achieve much more. You can do this vice versa. You can always have more people here if you want to represent it that way. So we understand leverage in a fulcrum. We understand the principle. For example, let's assume you want to travel from London to Paris. You can choose to ride your bike yourself. You could choose to walk, or you can choose to walk into the Eurostar ticket office and buy a ticket and sit down quietly on a train, and in 2.5 hours you'll be in Paris. You can enjoy a great meal, meet good friends, look at the beautiful city, and you can actually make your way back to London. That is using leverage. That is how simple it is. Leverage is simply your ability to do more with less. It doesn't mean that you do nothing. I'm going to qualify this because there's been a lot of misunderstanding with regards to creating wealth and doing it through the creation of passive income. Now, I'm going to stick to what I want to talk about because I don't want to be distracted, but I will come back to talking about passive income because I think it's important we understand that there's a slight level of misunderstanding about what it means and how it's created. Now, if you want to be wealthy, if you want to be healthy, and if you want to be happy, you've got to understand the word leverage, but also you've got to understand how to use it. Now, I'm going to be dealing with leverage from the point of financial wealth. And I'm going to be talking about 4 types of leverage that I think you must know. The first is wisdom. Leverage. The second I'm going to talk about is what we call money. And particularly what we call other people's money. Next, I'm going to talk about OPT, time. In other words, other people's time. Next, I'm going to talk about OPE, experiences. In other words, other people's experiences. With this option, we're talking about knowledge. In other words, OPK, other people's knowledge. Now, this sounds very simplistic, and it's meant to be that way. If you understand these 4 leverage options, then you've positioned yourself in such a way that you can achieve any financial dream or goal if you know how to apply them wisely and if you know when to apply them. Now, I'm going to start with the leverage of wisdom. And there's a difference between knowledge alone and wisdom. There's a difference between information and wisdom. Knowledge is like having a tool. You have a hammer in your house. If you leave the hammer lying around in your living room and you have a young baby and the baby picks up the hammer, the baby can use that hammer, and if there's a glass table around, the baby can, for some reason, out of excitement, can use the hammer on the glass. And you have casualties. You have a casualty. The same hammer can be used by a really, really well-crafted carpenter to make a beautiful piece of furniture. So, what is wisdom and how does it differ from knowledge or information? Information and knowledge is like a tool, like a hammer. Wisdom, on the other hand, is knowing when to use it, where to use it, how to use it, and having the experience of using it. and more importantly, when to discard it and go for something different. That is wisdom. Now, leverage wisdom is the most important in my opinion. Reason being, that is the leverage of wisdom that tells you about the leverage of OPM. It's the level of wisdom that tells you about the leverage of OPT, other people's time and how to use it. It's the leverage of wisdom that allows you to use OPE, other people's experiences. How and why? Very simply, you gain wisdom through study. The more you study, the more you increase your level of understanding, the more you increase the quantity for ideas you have, and the more you increase your level of awareness. Now, these three areas are so critical because if you can combine good ideas with understanding and awareness, and you're willing to take action, that leads to success. So wisdom is the most important thing. And to the extent that Solomon said, wisdom is the principal thing. And therefore, in all you're getting, get understanding. Wisdom is important because without wisdom, without study, without understanding, without awareness, you're blinded to all of the opportunities around you. Many people say you've got to be be in the right place at the right time. And I usually correct them. I say it's not just about being in the right place at the right time. You have to be the right person in the right place and at the right time. But even more importantly, you've got to be aware of where you are. And that all begins through wisdom. Now, very quickly, I want to talk about OPM. OPM is so important because OPM relies on using debt or equity partners. Now, if you want to be wealthy, you have one of two ways of getting wealthy or of creating money. Number one, you work for money. And about 96% of the population have adopted this strategy. Many people are trading time for money. That is the worst way to make money. As a matter of fact, you should work for joy, for happiness, for enjoyment, fulfillment, for purpose, not for money. You work to allow the talents and gifts that have been given to you to be developed so you can create value for other people. But OPM is important because the second strategy to making money is to have money work for you. With the first strategy, you work for money, meaning you're money is the master, you're the slave. With the second strategy, money works for you, meaning you're the master, money is the slave. One of the fastest ways to become the master of the money is through what we call the leverage of other people's money. By that I simply mean you take a portion of what you're earning, you combine it with the availability of debt leverage. It allows you to begin your investment journey, and very soon you can then have money working for you. The second way is to find partners. So I'll give you a classic example. Let's say, for example, there is an investment you have seen that requires a capital of £500,000, but it promises a 10% return. And let's assume in this instance that, unfortunately, you only have £50,000. Now you have one of two choices. Let's assume that £50,000 is taking you approximately, say, 4 years to save. If you decided to save up this £500,000, it would mean that you would need about 40 years before you can invest. That's very slow, and as a matter of fact, there's a possibility that in 40 years' time, that investment will no longer be available because opportunities come like a thief in the night. You don't know when they come, but you've got to be prepared for them. By using leverage, money, other people's money, you can go to the bank and say to the bank, Mr. Banker, I found a great deal. I want you to be my partner. I have £50,000 and I want you to come in with me in this deal, but I need you to put down £450,000. You agree on a interest rate repayment, and the bank loans you the money. Now, if you have good financial records, if you're financially intelligent, you can raise that capital within 2-3 months. Now think about this, 2-3 months has saved you compared to 40 years which you had to wait to save the same amount. That is the power of using leverage. That is the power of using debt leverage. And all of us should have been taught how to do this from a young age, but we weren't. On the other hand, you might say, the banker might say to you, well, if we did this, then it means we'll be bringing up about 95% or more, in this case 90%, but the bank might say, well, we don't think it's a good deal for us. So we want you to increase your deposits. We want you to take on some of the risk. If the bank said we can only give you £350,000, then it means that you still need £100,000. If you choose not to use debt leverage or equity partners, then you can't get this deal. But if you're financially intelligent and you already have the wisdom and you know the options available, you can go to 2 or 3 partners and say, hey, I have this deal. I've got from the bank £350,000. I have £50,000. I need 2 partners who can come in at £50,000 each. They would make a third off. Whatever I'm making from the deal, the property will be mine. Whatever I make in terms of income, you have a third of it. And through the use of partners and using debt or using other people's money, you can secure this investment. That is the power of using OPM. Now, OPT is really important. And OPT simply means other people's time. Let me give you the simplest way of how this works. A number of years ago, I started to develop what I considered at that time to be a different lifestyle. A lifestyle that could help me do what I wanted to do, but also give me the freedom to do what I wanted to do. Now, like everyone, we all have what we call chores. There are routine activities we do which are necessary, but we do them ourselves. We've been trained to do those. For example, cleaning the house, maybe washing your car, doing your cooking, doing your laundry, perhaps doing your bookkeeping. We like to do it ourselves because we've done it for so long and we believe we're good at it. But it's not the best use of your time. As a matter of fact, I try to encourage people and I say, if there is anything you're doing that is at the standard minimum wage, you should never do it. You should delegate it to someone else, especially if there's someone who can do it as good as you do it or better. If there's something you do that anyone can do and that type of work is at minimum wage level, you shouldn't be doing it. If you want to be wealthy, you've got to be thinking like a wealthy person. So for example, let's assume that £1 million is what you want to make every single year. To make £1 million every single year, assuming 2,000 work hours every single year, it means that your hour is worth £500 per hour. Now you're probably asking yourself, how do I get 2,000 working hours? Well, we have 52 working weeks in a year. We have 40 working hours per week. So what I've simply said here is let's assume 50 working weeks. Take out 2 weeks for holiday. Now I know it's much more depending on where you're watching from. If you're in the UK, you probably get about 20 to 25 days in terms of holiday. But in this case, I want to use a round number, so I've used 50. But also because on average, we actually spend about 2,000 working hours every single year. Some people are contracted to do 40 hours per week. On average, most people are doing about 46 hours, including overtime during the weekend. So 2,000 work hours every single year times or divided by 1 million gives you £500 an hour. What that simply means is that if you have a picture of yourself and if your target goal is to become a millionaire or you earn 1 million every single year, then your hour is worth £500, and that means anything less than £500, you've got to find a way to delegate it to someone else. Meaning every single thing that is a minimum wage activity should not be done by you. That only works if you know how to use the leverage of other people's time, meaning find people and surround yourself with people who can do things for you so that you can spend your time doing the best thing that you do well. That's so important. I think I'm going to say that again. Surround yourself with people who can do things for you equal to as good as you do it, so that you can spend your time doing what you do the best. That's how you create wealth. You've got to change your mindset and see yourself less as someone who has to do everything, and actually surround yourself with people who can do it for you. Now, the final part is other people's experiences. This is where I conclude. Now, other people's experiences are so important. Think about this. I remember one of the turning points in my life. One of the turning points in my life, if you've heard me, you've heard any of my talks, you've probably heard me talk about this. And this moment in my life was so remarkable because of the impact it had on me. There are two ways of learning. You can learn from your experiences, or you can learn from other people's experiences. When you learn from your experiences, we say that you're learning primarily from your mistakes, because success is not a very good teacher. You learn more through feedback, making mistakes and course correcting. But it's a very slow way of learning because you're investing time and you're not using leverage. On the other hand, if you choose to learn from someone who's been successful, you're learning and you're compounding time, meaning that you can learn in 4 hours like I did. I learned reading a book in 4 hours what took the author between 40 and 50 years to learn. And in addition to just the knowledge I gained, the author, they explained their experiences. They talked about their failures, setbacks, obstacles, challenges, and then eventual victories and success. So I had all these advantages, which I didn't have to pay for using my time. So it saved me all of the trial and error approach because I compounded time by making a decision to use other people's experiences. So the shortcut to true success is to simply take your experiences and combine it with other people's experiences, because that creates a much more reliable and a guaranteed level of success. But you must understand the value. Now, how do you know how to use other people's experiences? You go back to the first that I gave you, wisdom, because not all experiences are to be copied. There are always two sides of a ledger. And I like reading stories because in many stories you get one of the twos. In some cases you get both in the same story. In life we have people we call examples. They lived well, they acted well, and therefore their life story serves as a model for other people to emulate. You also have another group of people we say you don't want to do what they did. We call them failures. And also the life model is there to serve as a guide for you not to copy what they did. In the same way, in using OPE, you've got to understand who to copy and who not to copy. And I would say this as I conclude: only copy those who are successful. Study their beliefs, study their habits, study their character, study their lifestyle, and then model yourself on them. And what you find is you get the same results. So to be successful, to be wealthy, to propel yourself ahead, learn by using the leverage of other people's experiences. Now, if you can combine the 4 leverage options that I've just shared with you, what you find is that your life takes on a relatively significant turn and change and trajectory that many people will stand back and say, how did this all happen? And then you can reply with humility, leverage. Hope that's been useful. God bless.